Hi, I'm your host, Dr. M, and thank you very much, Obasan and the invitees to be present on the first episode of Dr. M's Long. Now, what you see on the right-hand side of my image is Hensai in Japanese. You know what it means. And on the left side is Kaizen, which also doesn't require any explanation. All of you are experts on that. So now we're going to introduce the topic and the speaker, Hide Oba. Obasan, thank you very much for being there on Dr. M's lounge. And you would be interacting with our invitees on the subject introduction to the structured thinking of TPS in specific respect for people. The invitees have gone through the podcast that was shared with them. And now I hand it over to you, Obasan, to introduce the subject in brief and introduce yourself too. Thank you very much for being there for me. So, Obasan, go ahead and introduce the topic for us, and we'll sit and listen to you. I'm sure that's quite okay with you, and you're an expert at this. So here we go.
So, Dr. Mohan, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Just like you said, I talked about using my framework to understand culture and a lot of different aspects of TPS in different occasions. And Dr. Mohan contacted me, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And I wanted to sort of re-summarize what I learned and share with everybody. Just like my background, I was born in Nagoya, Japan. That is the bed town of Toyota. Toyota is located at the suburb of the city. My father worked for Toyota, and because of that, I lived in South Africa and Kentucky. Both of that because of Toyota has a factory. And about 20 years ago, I started working as a TPS consultant. Not 12 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm not that young, I'm very old. How I introduced to this TPS consulting was that my father, his name is Hajime Oba. He was the first president of Toyota Supplier Support Center, which was established in 1992 in United States. This organization started by Toyota because at that time there was a lot of trade conflict between United States and Japan, which is completely different now. But his responsibility was to coach not just the Toyota suppliers, but all kinds of business. I remember he was going to like furniture factories, he was going to hospitals, he went to a lot of food or any industry. He was requested, then he will go and help introduce the production system. And because that work looked so exciting to me, I asked them if I can join his company. And since that time, he did not give me any lecture training. I was on the Gemba all the time, and we spent so many time together on the Gemba. And the lucky thing for me is like, I talk the same language, and he's always home when I come back, so we can follow up on some of the philosophical topics together using the language that it's comfortable for him to explain. And I got really a lot of insight. And as I get more insight, we try to summarize this philosophy and thinking. And that's when I came to this framework of summarizing the concept in his thinking. Is when he goes to the Gemba, he's not looking for some words. He's not looking for some tools. He's not looking at some numbers. He's looking at the specific structure that exists behind these words or concept philosophies or numbers. And he's capturing the Gemba into points, lines, and areas and body. And this kind of structure exists in man, machine, material, method, management, or anything. And when I see the structure, he start improving because it becomes very obvious. That's one thing. And I start understanding his lessons in this structured way. This helped me sort of predict what he's going to say. He might be making a comment on certain lines, but then when he's talking about the line, he expects something else to happen inside the points, areas, body, and I can sort of predict what he will say. And that's when I think he came back to say, you improved and you got something. And I explained this framework and he really loved it. He told me to summarize it. Unfortunately, I was a lazy man, so I could not finish the entire summary before he passed away. But 3 months before his passing, he gave me a book called Point, Line, and Area, which was written by a Russian artist. And he was trying to analyze paintings in a scientific way. And the book analyzed the point lines. And yes, it was applied to art, painting. So it wasn't that relevant to copy immediately, but still, right, instead of approaching the art of TPS or art of management and keep it sort of fuzzy, by breaking down into the points and lines and areas and body, I can become a little bit more scientific about the way we understand things. And I'm not saying we should not use any numbers or stuff. Once we define these points and lines, we can, that can be converted into numbers, right? What is one waste or one problem? Yeah, we need to understand the points and line behind the meaning. Otherwise, people will be saying something different than what the problem is.
This is the way of approaching and understanding what is happening in the Gemba. Start with the line,
Gembas.
Points
and lines, and So, and this is sort of like a visual summary of it. But when I say area, usually we summarize into a standardized word format. And then by having a standardized word, from there we implement. A lot of people jump to systems, but I think they always implement a mechanism which has a very high level of control and system where you have a degree of freedom, and then there's a structure behind it. Structure includes formal and informal structures, and that helps develop a better culture. That's how I understood, and this is something I want to talk more about. Is this a very important cultural aspect? Respect for people. I hear this word everywhere now, but the meaning, or at least what I learned from my dad, was a little bit different. That's why I try to I summarized his thinking into the framework of points, line, area, and body.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. Because respect for people, what we understand is, hello, how are you?
One thing I want to say is that this framework is under construction, and it's easier to communicate this on Gemba. That was my original intention, but I also wanted to share there's a different way of thinking, and it really helped me. So I just wanted to introduce, and And my father will say, stop making excuses, make more Kaizen. So instead of trying to excuse myself that this is only for Gemba, I would try my best to explain as possible. And thank you very much for all the questions I went through, and I will try to cover that as I reflect on all the past presentation. So to understand and to explain this structure that I mentioned, I used the example of the respect for people, and one example I used was the eye. What are some of the points in line that the eyes are doing that I need to respect, I need to think about, so that the area becomes easy for the people to work. And I'm sorry about those Chinese symbols over there, but that's just an example that on the left side, it's talking about the sight. The right side is point, line, area, and body. So again, we use these Japanese words have these kind of points and line included, and that allows us to see things and think about it in a better way. One other question was like, how do we make sure that what should we do if there's a quality problem? And if there's a quality problem, like shouldn't I ask the operator to fix the quality problem immediately? And my response to that is, if somebody's doing the task in a wrong way, you should stop him immediately and fix the problem immediately. But if this was a defect that was produced like, in the past, and you are trying to notify a person, I think it's very disturbing to stop the operator from what they are focusing on now. And I think about it, and it's the concept of just in time, right? When I think about the concept of just in time, and I think about the structure behind just in time, and what's the critical point in just in time, and I will say it's now. What do I need to do now? Just in time, I think Taichi Ono, and I wrote a blog about this, is Taichi Ono talks about the importance of understanding what needs to be now, and that's what is being sold now. And we should produce it immediately. What we should produce is what we just sold now. The shorter the gap between the timing of sales and the timing of manufacturing is less, it's better. It's more just-in-time thinking. So, and Toyota fully respect the people's now, right? The just-in-time thinking is that, okay, because we have lead time, we cannot immediately produce what the market sold, but by reverse engineering to say, we can specify to each individuals what they should be focusing on now. The problem with the traditional thinking is that we are tied to the past, right? I made a defect. I need to fix the defect. And because I'm fixing the defect, one of the best operators are tied to fixing the defect, not necessarily focusing on what they need to be producing now. Or another example is the engineers and managers are busy with sort of problem solving or making a report of the problems to the senior management by sacrificing what they are supposed to be doing now. And because of that, they are in this vicious cycle of, tied to the past, and they can't work on the future. There's a lot of books up that says that Toyota employees focusing on the future, but what I think that's happening is that because they focus on what they need, they allow people to focus on what they need to do now, and they execute what they need to do now in a good way, they have less problems. And if there is a problem, the entire organization focus on that problem now, right? They don't keep it. They don't wait until it becomes past. And because they repeat that cycle a lot, they don't have any problem like they used to. That allows the managers and engineers to talk about the future, prepare them for the future. It's not like these guys are working on the future by sacrificing now. And that's the notion that I think is very important here, is that people should focus on what they should be working on right now. And the part of providing respect for the people is to be clear on what they need to do right now. The other question I had was like, how do we make sure that the people follow the standard work? And one of the things that I got coached by my father was that, we shouldn't force the people to memorize the standardized work. Let the materials and layouts and tools and these kind of things will memorize those standardized work. Let the people focus on quality and Kaizen. And one idea of that is switch. Switch is a point in the process where I need to activate the machine. But the location of this switch sends a powerful message to the operator. If I'm working from sequence number 1 to 2, and I put the switch in the middle of that, which is the final activation switch of the process number 1, I'm guiding the people to next step. But in many cases, this point, this switch is located somewhere in a crazy location, which confuses the people. And this is where we have to, a lot of people are trying to make the standardized followed by operators. But the idea behind standardized work is don't confuse the people, guide the people using these switches, tools, or materials, and guide them or navigate them toward a better way of doing work so that they can focus on quality and potentially Kaizen ideas. And another important thing here is that I think Akio recently summarized his 14 years of presidency at Toyota, and he used the word that I really, really liked, and I'm still thinking about this, is that the challenge that he had for last 14 years was to bring back the sovereignty. I think English version might translate it authority, but if I directly translate what he said in Japanese was sovereignty, bring back the sovereignty back to Gemba. And the Gemba have a right, that means Gemba have a right to refuse bad design of work, right? If the work is designed to be confusing, they should have the right to say, no, this is confusing, this is not helping me, I want something better than that. And sovereignty comes with a responsibility. I cannot just be a critique. I need to become some part of the solution to say, hey, if I place this in a better location, I can perform my standardized work better. And this is a powerful concept that I think Toyota gave to the shop floor, is the sovereignty, the right to use, but also right to improve and be part of the solution. Another questions was around management of how can I introduce this structure thinking to the managers. And just to be clear, I always start with the management team on this thinking because I think they need to understand this thinking before they jump into any other tools. And the first message, and I always send this one message is go to Gemba. I do not talk about this in front of the manager first. I introduce myself, and then the first thing I will say is, let's go Gemba. As I observe the Gemba together with the managers, and then when they see, they will start to describe what's happening using words and numbers. And as they describe things in words and numbers, I will ask more detailed questions about who, when, where, what. And somewhat these questions should guide them towards the point that they are trying to make. And I'm trying to crystallize those, the observation into some kind of points and lines, and I draw them, summarize them on the piece of paper or something to further discuss what are we missing, what we do have, and what do we need to improve. And the key part of this training is I want the managers to recognize that there are certain points existing on the show floor, lines existing on the show floor, areas that should exist on the show floor, instead of me sort of telling them or teaching them. And it's also a sort of like a way of training, but I'm not trying to push the structure thinking to these managers, right? I'm trying to change it to pull. So very important for me is to take them to the Gemba, and by asking a lot of questions, they recognize that this kind of some points and lines should exist. And from there, I can convert the conversation to a more structured thinking. Just as I said, I think maybe I said it in my past presentation, but when my father was trying to summarize about TPS, and he was trying to summarize based on standardized work, and I helped him, but yeah, the bullet points that we had before we summarizing, just summarizing, reached like 1,000 things. And we just, shaked our head and said, like, I'm not trying to make, people memorize 1,000 things. That doesn't help, right? I don't need a dictionary to carry around to go to Gemba. So how can I simplify it? And it turned out to be, it's actually my cheat sheet was designed around points, line, area, and body that my father always talked about. And so by only thinking about those points in line, I'm trying to find those critical points, critical line on the Gemba as I observe and communicate that to my the managers. So I would try my best to make managers recognize. The reason why I'm laughing is there are 2 points that I always push at early stage of training managers. And it goes back to the other question about how can people move away from working on the yesterday's newspaper to what they should be doing is introducing the control points and introducing the change points. There are certain points in the operational activities that we should have a control. And there are certain, unfortunately, even if I define those control points, every day we will have a change in the process. Therefore, and those changes could be intentional, could be unintentional. It doesn't really matter. We should plan those things ahead to be prepared organization for the upcoming production. And that's an important responsibility of the management, right? So that people can focus on now. The management's responsibility to make sure these control points and change points are done before the process, right? And that's the change that I wish I can ask questions and navigate the people, the managers to recognize these points. But too many managers are right now focus on the output, right? They look at the KPI boards, they look at the whatever board data from the past and start talking about problem solving and solutions. But what I'm trying to change is let's focus more on the input side. And what are the control points and change points that we should manage so that we will have a successful output? And that's the dimension that I'm trying to change. And I always try to push those 2 points to the management early. Maybe there is a way to navigate them to recognize these things, but that typically helps. And the final point was about the training. And I think I'm already touching some part of the training. I try not to push, but try to pull to make people recognize these things, because once they start to recognize these things, there is a sort of like an automatic discovery of points and lines and development of the whole structure. But one thing I always say is this needs to happen on Gemba. And this is the summary of, I presented in the video before about the training points or establishing the lines and the coach and students relationship. How long they're going to try by themselves, how long, and what's the PDCA cycle that I'm going to rotate to make sure that the training goes on, and how can I structure more sort of like organizational approach to training activities. But yeah, sorry. One of the things that I always try to be careful is do not overproduce training points. I've seen some passionate managers who's giving like a speech for like an hour on what are the things that they need to improve. And they list stuff like 30 items. Or I have a plant manager who's passionate about implementing A3, and they have like 40 bullet points that they need to do. If you overproduce, nothing will get done. People will just get confused. Most of our items will be ignored. And I think that's the whole process of this A3 of training, is to come up with something that critical that somebody should focus on right now. Let's some people focus on one point at a time and develop themselves instead of trying to overwhelm them. And the best tool, and I already maybe said it before, but of developing this structured thinking is standardized work and Kaizen. I think that's the only way to learn this properly. I am using this structure to summarize some of the things that we discovered through standardized work exercises and Kaizens, because that's easy for me. And I think a lot of students take it easy to understand the whole system that they have developed through standardized work and Kaizen. Without these two, nothing will happen. So it's not a classroom exercise, please. It's very connected to the standardized work and Kaizen. And Tom asked an interesting question about, how long it takes and to develop. I think when I introduce this kind of structure to, especially to the management team, it does help me reduce the time a little bit to focus on some of the details that they should know about the process. But how to reach higher level, I think it still takes a long time, because I'll be honest, I myself is still learning about this. Myself is still discovering about this. And that's why I wanted to share the last episode is my father's approach, right? Every time from the beginning, from 20 years ago to last time I was with him 3 years ago, no matter which Gemba I go, he will pick up one material at some point throughout the Gemba walk, and he will put that material on top of his hand and present that to the operators. And I always been wondering why he's doing that. And some people say it's his performance or whatever, and some people, that's the real way of respecting people and stuff. But because one of the things I recognized was that one is that by putting a material on his hand and present to the operators, who is his customer, he is understanding what the customer wants or needs in their process. How does a customer want the materials to be presented? And when the operators really like that particular location, he or she will make a big smile, and there's a interesting eye contact going on between them that confirming that location makes a lot of sense. Another reason why he's doing that is it's a coach, right? Because I've seen him doing that all the time, I kind of learned that, okay, that's where he wants the material to be. Now, because I worked with him for 20 years, I also know the trick is that he's giving us a hint. And if I exactly place the material where he put the hand, I will get in trouble later if he will ask me, are you trying to become a copycat? And he doesn't want anybody to become a copycat. He wants the thinker. So he's giving us a hint on where the material should be. And another line that I found this to be interesting is he's always talking about his sensei. His sensei is not Taichi Ono. His sensei was one of the first generation Ono students, Mr. Cho, Mr. Kusunoki, Mr. Giya, Mr. Yoshikawa, Mr. Hayashi. I heard a lot of stories from, and he had a huge respect to those people who coached him. And he knows that those first generation TPS guys respected Taichi Ono and Mr. Suzumura for the challenges that they got. And it's one of his things that he's thinking, no matter which gemba he goes, and he knows that those gemba will never be visited by any of his coaches, but he's sort of imagining inside himself, communicate, if my coach was here, how would he challenge me? What kind of thinking he would challenge me to come up with? And I think that's one interesting way of developing, because we all have coaches. We might not be getting the immediate coaching, but we can reflect on the places where they put those materials to think about what kind of coaching he would challenge me right now. I'm not saying I can accurately describe, but based on my experience, and I think this is the advantage of people like Tom who worked at Toyota, or Dr. M, you work with Dr. Imai. So we can always continue to reflect on the coachings that we got from the past to continuously challenge ourselves to think a little bit more about the particular locations or particular lines that we have developed, right? And another interesting line that I saw with, and this impacts the development of the people, is the self-curiosity, right? If the person is not interested in discovering more new ideas, new points, you won't develop by themselves, or the development speed will be extremely slow. And I think that's the reason why I think Toyota used like word jishken, self-study, is that if you don't have that interest to learn further, it's just a waste of time. So he was curious about where would be the best place to locate the material until he was the last visit of the show floor. And he didn't know that would become a last visit of the show floor, but he had this curiosity to continuously discover what's the ideal location and how can I bring that material to that location and continuously improve the system. That curiosity drove him to his level. And the final thing is this is entirely a co-learning environment that he's trying to create. It's not just he is learning or he is only coaching to me. We can learn together about where is the ideal location. Nobody can talk to Taichi Ono anymore, but if we co-learn, we might be able to reach the ideal level. And this is
Thank you for sharing your insights and the teachings that you got from your father. I like the idea that you mentioned that to challenge yourself, you should consider how your coach will be subjecting you through some questions when you're on Gemba. That's a very beautiful insight. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Is there more to that as to like it's good to be able to challenge yourself, but how do you imitate what your coach would do, or how do you go about doing that? Would like to be, if you can share some more thoughts about that.
Yeah, just
Well,
give me a minute, Obasan. Give me a minute.
yeah.
It'll be very nice if I can see the faces of all of y'all. Please put on your videos. Please, 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 please. This is the first time that I'm getting 14 people on my screen. I'd love to see their face. Bear with me, and Obasan, you can take down one by one point and address it together. Otherwise, your trajectory might change. Lani has a question for you. I'm sure you will answer Ashok Motwani too. Just put up your hand, ask a question, and you can take it from there, Obasan.
Yeah, so back to the question that I've been asked. I know that my father, no matter how good the Kaizen is, he will try to come up with something better. That's something like a rule that he placed himself. And I think that's the rule existing in some of the TPS guys, is that you are not there just to praise the Kaizen. You need to come up with something better than that. So no matter how good I think that point is, I know my coach will challenge me. So I'm always thinking, what can I do better? What can I do better? And that's the only way to improve this. And I always try to imagine myself of a dad standing behind me, like, I'm going to challenge you with a different one. Now, there are cases where he went like, oh, okay, kind of thing, which means I did a good job. But I always try to imagine him saying that, what kind of crazy ideas he will have, a different idea that he will come up with on this particular Kaizen. Yeah, that's all I can say right now is, yeah, try to imagine. I mean, whatever the idea I have, I will implement first, right? Try it. But then when I reflect on the Hansei, I think about how he will challenge me.
Lani?
Yeah. Should we go to Ronnie?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Obasan, thank you very much for your presentation. I had just a couple of comments. One is you mentioned the term sovereignty, and And in the United States, what that means is absolute power.
Mhm.
And a more common term that we would use in the workplace would be autonomy.
Mhm.
The worker has sovereignty to not do the work if it's unsafe.
Mm.
Okay. But if you literally in the United States, if you gave everybody sovereignty, they would do it their own way. And that
Okay.
just won't work. And so we typically use the term autonomy, which means to have some volition, some input into the way things are done. But of course, any standard work has to have ergonomics applied, has to have engineering applied, and so seldom can the operator be sovereign in that. Just a matter of semantics. But the other thing is, I really enjoy your concept of the point line area and space concept. There's a very good presentation of that made. There's a fellow by the name of um Hayakawa, Sensei Hayakawa, and
Okay.
he created what he called a ladder of abstraction. And it's just
Okay.
taking everything from the details to higher and higher levels of abstraction. And so if you really want to read kind of a different twist on Hide's presentation of point line, etc., Hayakawa has a very good presentation that um, and you can Google it just by reading
Yeah.
level of ladder of abstraction is what it's called. But thank
Okay.
you for applying it in the industrial world. That's a cool concept. Thank you, Hide.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. Yeah, I know this word sovereignty is really powerful. At least, yeah, I think I need to think about what's a better way. Authority, autonomy, maybe, or another one. Yeah, and I think an important right thing I try to think about is we people have the right and the responsibility, right?
Yeah,
Like we have a freedom of speech, but we have a responsibility to pay taxes. I think in Japan we have to provide education to our children. That kind of responsibility exists. So how do we balance that and give that autonomy to the people? So yeah, maybe sovereignty is a strong word, but I need to think about the better word that Aki was trying to send us, and I think that's a very interesting comment. And thank you very much for the recommendation about Hayakawa. I will try to Google it. My father did recommend me to read a book called Point Line Area. This was written by a writer called Kandinsky, by a Russian guy. And this guy was trying to describe paintings in a scientific way, and how he used this kind of concept too. So yeah, I think that in different areas of the subject, there are people trying to analyze the world in this kind of structured way. There's also like how do you call it? Cultural anthropology. There's a guy that came up with the philosophy called structuralism, and that is one of the modern philosophy thinking. It's called structuralism. So his thinking, his structuralism was too complicated. That's why it didn't continue. But there's a lot of people trying to approach to different problems thinking about the structure, and that's why it's very interesting. So thank you very much for the recommendation. I definitely going to try to read this book about from Hayakawa, Ladder of Abstraction. Thank you. Any other question? Oh, I see a question on the.
Hi, hi, Obasan.
Yes.
Who is that?
Kiran here.
Yeah, Kiran.
Yes, thank you for providing the very in-depth knowledge about the Toyota production system and structural thinking. Your articles on LinkedIn are always adding value to us. So my just question is, most of the times we have never worked in Toyota. We are the TPS and Lean practitioner, but are you conducting any workshop because we are not working in Toyota to teach the TPS and how to inculcate the culture of the continuous improvement? Most of the times we struggle for the sustenance because we are not getting the support from the top management, particularly in Indian scenario. So I am having always a learning mindset. I would like to learn new things in depth, but can you please guide us on TPS or how to inculcate the culture?
Okay, Kiran, can I paraphrase what you're saying? First of all, I would love to see your face.
Yes, thank you.
If I don't see your face, I won't answer that, and I won't permit my guest to answer that. Ryan, nice of you to have joined. I know you had a meeting with your Vice President Quality. So what Kiran was saying is coaching for a TPS culture. And we have a lot of articles, a lot of LinkedIn articles, Kiran. You can go through that. We can have a separate session. As a matter of fact, you can do one thing, and Tom Jones knows him. There's Ernie Richardson. He has done a podcast with me called Leadership Culture. So if you can go through that podcast, we can meet again and discuss in detail. I have a question for you.
Yeah. Wait, let me say one thing.
Sure.
One of the things about culture that I learned from one of the Toyota guy is that he said that the plant manager, he was a plant manager, and he said culture is my responsibility to manage. So he said the culture is his responsibility, and he made that statement extremely clear from the beginning, which was a very powerful statement, because a lot of people I see is using culture as an excuse, right? It's not my responsibility. Culture exists, therefore I cannot change. But that plant manager stood up and said, that's my responsibility. And I thought that was really powerful. To change the culture, what he did is to create a chain of human beings, people. So he starts saying is like, okay, I'm gonna coach my direct report. And my direct report gonna coach his or her direct report. And therefore you create this chain among the entire organization that they are all connected to him. So if he sees some kind of behaviors that doesn't sort of respecting the culture, he will say that it's because I didn't coach my direct report properly. I will try to coach him or her better. And he took the full ownership of that. And then when I visited his shop floor, it was simply amazing because everybody's trying to solve, working on some kind of problem in Kaizen, and everybody's trying to show him what they are doing because everyone knows he's the master coach of the whole organization. And and I think my father said that's like a really TPS organization. And so that's something that I think the management needs to step up. I read a lot of articles about culture, and it's been discussed in business school, but it's still being treated like this object that it's out of control. That's not true, right? And Toyota successfully implement TPS culture in United States, Canada. Now they have a wonderful plant in Mexico, Brazil, Southeast Asia, China, anywhere in the world. So, and on the other hand, there's a lot of Japanese companies that's struggling to implement TPS culture. And the bottom line is who's taking the ownership on the culture? And then are we creating this chain of people, relation? So,
Thank you,
that's
Obasan.
my advice.
For example, we read about the respect for the people, but after hearing your webinar, so we got the different insight, the depth of respect for the people. Thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of value addition.
And I have a question on the text, right? About sorry, I'm interested with, sorry, this one question is from Andy. I'm very interested with the eye body structure explanation about Andon as a means for operator who needs help. Then let me add Andon also means for operator who acts as an independent QC inspector, well success check operator, process owner to eliminate waste of waiting in real time. So this question about Andon, and I think this question about Jidoka concept, and I think one of the important, again, what's the point? The critical point in Jidoka concept is self. Jidoka's Ji means self. And I think it's important to understand that Toyota is trying to create self that's, how can I say, not self-sustaining, but they complete the work entirely, right? Self-process completion. That's what I think they use Japanese terminology, but they don't want other people to let somebody know that somebody did a good job or not. At the end of every cycle, every operator should have the capability or methodology to understand if he or she have done good job or not. That's total thinking. And that's why it's very important to think about how individual self can become sufficient. And then when they don't, when they cannot meet this good work condition, they should pull the unknown. And there's a strong direct connection between the pull and the person who's need help and the person who's providing the support. I've been to a lot of factory where there's a many color light. And one color is to pull the maintenance, one color is to pull the materials, one color is to pull quality, whatever thing that they have. And my father will always say that that's a city Christmas tree that you have in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense because it needs to be clear on when somebody pulls the arm down, who's responsible to provide the help needs to be clear. And in the case of Toyota, operator will pull the arm down and team leader must respond. There's no question about that. If a team leader needs help, the group leader will help. So this relationship of this line, it needs to be extremely clear. It cannot be crisscrossed, mixed up, and nobody knows. Nobody really knows who's supposed to be providing any kind of help. And that relationship needs to be clear. So that's how I would try to describe in these points and lines. Is there any other question? Kiran?
Lani has a.
Hide, I'd like to kind of piggyback back on something you said, because I think it's incredibly important. Long time ago, my mentor told me, Wheaties is not the breakfast of champions. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. And I think all workers like to get feedback. Of course, they prefer positive feedback over negative feedback. But the problem is supervisors are not necessarily very good at it. Sometimes they're not very sincere about it. But one of the places you can always get feedback is from the system. And if the system has a good sense of system of transparency, it will tell the worker in the most sincere form that they're doing good work, that they're on cycle time, that their product is acceptable. And I have found that feedback from a good system of transparency is just precious. It's just absolutely precious. And you can simultaneously motivate the whole workforce and also let them know if they need help. But the system of transparency, I think, is grossly underestimated. You mentioned it. I mean, you brought up the point. I'm just trying to piggyback and emphasize the importance of it, because in a lot of American factories, the only place that they have that information is at the end of the line. And very often the only thing they really talk about is what went wrong. Okay. Yep. Meanwhile, the worker does not get the feedback about what's doing right, nor does he get it in a timely fashion so that if there is something wrong, he can either correct it or get help so he can correct it. And so that concept of feedback is an incredibly empowering thing. And if the system is doing it, it's sincere. It's sincere. They know the supervisors aren't coming by and just glad handing you or whatever, or unduly criticizing you. It's sincere feedback. Excellent point.
Yeah, and I also think this feedback needs to be, again, structured, because a lot of cases the feedback is mixed, right? I get a feedback from quality that I need to set this process into this parameters, but the engineering is telling me different story. The maintenance is telling me different story. So I guess like 3 or 4 operators are getting 3 or 4 directions about, okay, how am I supposed to set up this machine? They're getting confused. And in the end, they will say, what the hell, who cares? I'm not gonna ignore every one of them, right? And that's the unfortunate truth that going on is like, yeah, I've seen like 4 or 5 different documents, completely different things. And like, I laid it out and nobody knows what the right answer is. And yeah, of course, the operator will never, ever follow the standard anymore, because we just provide a confusing feedback to them. And that's something that we need to give a single feedback and a quick cycle, right? Anybody who's giving feedback like, oh yeah, last week you made a mistake. It's too late. We don't know what we ate last week or what we did last week. We have to think about it. And we've been making it working for 40 hours a week. Impossible to recall what mistake we made. So it's critically important to think about how to make a good structure and system, right? For
Since
feedback.
we're talking about respect for people, the hour is up. And if I have the permission from the audience, can I extend it by 10 minutes? Because Ashok Motwani wants to ask a question and I have a small question. Can I extend the session by another 10 minutes? Those who don't, sure. So Ashok Motwani, you can ask your question and then please permit me to ask one question.
Sure. So, Obasan, I think what you just now said, adding to Lonnie's point of giving feedback, when I was learning how to be a good engineer, I was told that control plan on the manufacturing line is the Bible, where people on the shop floor or the supervisor or the team lead or the group lead would have their first point of information to follow the process that has been laid out. And I have seen that this document is there in companies, but not utilized as a Bible on the shop floor. Does Toyota have something like that in their system, or is it more of an American ISO system control plan document, which is considered to be a Bible? If you can share something about that. Thank you.
I think they have a very strict, I don't know the name, control plan, or I'm trying to summarize this paper called Quality Control Process Chart, something like that, QC process chart. Yeah, that is the Bible. That's the bottom line of implementing standardized work. Or before making the standardized works, that's something that we need to refer to create the work standard, to give instruction on how to do the work properly to the operators. And there's a strict, inside that document is talk about, what are the critical quality characteristics that each process must have control, what the methodology of checking things, what the frequency, who is responsible for that, those kinds of things.
The reaction.
Yeah, those kind of things have to be highlighted, and it's part of the. Actually, I'm trying to make a blog about that. I'm researching because, I'm struggling to find a good example in English, to be honest. It's very popular in Japan, and I know that it exists, and I know that Toyota highly respect that, but it's very few places that I've seen them actually implementing that.
I can share your example for manufacturing on that.
And I have some examples, but unfortunately, a lot of places that we go to Gemba, and I use the word I use the word control chart, and they would just show me the graph one, the one of the 7 tools. You see, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about scale steps. Yeah, no, very few companies make that, unfortunately, but Toyota has that.
Okay, thank you.
John, go ahead, John.
May I just add a comment to that? I think those controls are within what a lot of people would call standardized work. At Toyota, I think we call them job breakdown sheets. Because that's where all the detail is, and those quality standards, engineering standards, all of that are in that. So the operator, as they're trained, understands and knows why they're doing those things and why they're important. And I'll shut up.
Thanks, Tom.
You don't have to shut up.
Because my question follows that, because I need a little bit of explanation here. Obasan, this is your chart. If you is this visible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What I want to request you to tell me is, you see this, and we are talking about autonomy too. Okay. when in the episode that we did, we had 3 levels in the body. We had mechanism, system, and structure. And what I understand and what we narrated over there is the autonomy gradually gets released as you go from mechanism to system to structure. You have absolutely no autonomy in the mechanism stage. Can you explain this to us, Obasan?
Absolutely no autonomy. Like, for example, I think it's interesting we talk about this control plan or job breakdown sheet. There is a process of making it, right? And there's no excuse for not following that process. I will call that a mechanism. But when we make those job breakdown sheet or control plan, we always face some kind of questions or doubts or some kind of problems. And that needs to be solved. And that's why we have a system to solve that, right? I need to have some kind of free resources to help me problem solve or execute that, right? And that's the problem that's happening right now. I think if I listen to some of the interviews that happened about Toyota recently, is like they had a strict plan to develop a product or specifically engines. They had a lot of questions, but people wasn't allowed to raise the question. And that's when the problem happened, is they start making fake data and stuff. So they have a strict plan to implement these control plans and job breakdown sheet. But when there is a problem or doubt, or question or anything happens, or they should allow people to raise their hands and provide the support that they're supposed to provide. And they should have what Toyota call the yoroku, or the extra power, somebody who's capable to help and available for them to help. But they didn't implement that system and trying to implement the mechanism. That's why the whole structure broke down, right? Am I saying, did I confuse you, Dr. M?
No, to me, it's clear. Lani has got a sweet smile. El Paso.
Excuse me, Dr. M, what did you say?
Yeah, you were smiling when Obasan was explaining, and I'm sure there's something going in your mind. So just share it with us.
No, I was just thinking of maybe some examples of that, but no, they're just kind of thoughts rattling around. Nothing special. Thank you.
Yeah, because this Dr. M's launch is meant for free exchange of thoughts and sticking to the subject. That's why I post a video and call the author, because none of us have got time to go through the entire 1.5 hours. That was called the Dr. M's podcast, and they told me that it was absurd that it was 1 hour. So I told them that this was a library in making, a digital library in making. So I gave them the access to that. And now from there, I gained a little bit of confidence. And then I started SMET, where 2 of my guests would interact. And then I ventured into this launch, so that the author who has done the video could answer, because in all the others there was no interaction. So I said, let's try this, and this also recorded. So I'm just experimenting, and that's the reason that I put on my symbol to this side is Kaizen, and this side is Hensai. So I'm thinking how to improve, because the main mission on which I'm working is to connect the continuous improvement professionals across the globe. So I am trying to learn and share with the continuous improvement community. So please feel free to give me a feedback on this episode. Somebody should have, I should have pulled the cord, because I forgot to press the recording button initially. So forgive me, Obasan. The initial introduction I couldn't, but then I got on from the question answer point of view. I promise you, next time I will not make that mistake. Can I have a quick feedback? Start from Tom across. Sensei, tell me something that I can improve.
Sure. I enjoyed the presentation, and thank you, Obasan, and Dr. M. However, I wonder if there might be more time for interaction potentially needed. That would be my feedback.
Yeah, Tom. Tom, I mean, I'm not making the defense, but I was not very clear whether the people will go through the video, which was an R and R plus. So that's the reason I requested Obasan to make the clip before answering the questions. So sorry, from next time onwards, we'll improve on that.
Yeah, so maybe I'm one of the few, but I did watch the whole podcast. So
Thank you.
So the recap was necessary for all of us to come on the same page.
So, Dr. M, Dr.
Yep.
M,
Yeah.
my feedback would be definitely what Tom Jones said in terms of things that Obasan mentioned. There were few new things that were brought up, and that creates another wave of questioning which was not in the presentation in the past. So by adding that, it just basically requires you to have more time for question answer, so that you can connect. If you had watched, I did watch the video and learn I can only get one thing out of the whole session. If at the moment I can learn more after rewatching it, but just because Obasan brought up some new concepts, new points, I think that requires a little bit more time for questioning.
Sure. On a guarantee that if you okay, this is what I'm going to do, Ashok, is this because this is on invitation, right? I mean, I took this thing of inviting people.
Yes.
So I will ask few questions on the video, and those people who score above 80% in the question, then I would know that you'll have gone through the video, and then I would. Sorry for that. I mean, I was just.
So there is a quiz required to be answered.
Sure, Ashok.
Before you can join the call.
Sorry, when Ashok and me meet, we always get into this la 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 la. Okay, so anyway, Andy, any feedback from you, sir?
Thank you very much, Dr. M and Obasan. I think this presentation and the previous one from YouTube is very, very good. So I learned a lot about things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
How about you, ma'am? Okay. There we go. Thank you very much. And I really wish.
Dr. M, if I may, I have a couple of comments. One is I'm a little bit of the Tom school of thought. I think the more question and answer period you have, I think the more interactive it is, the better it's going to be. And that is one of the differences between this product and the other products you brought out, between your vodcast and your SMET and now this. And I would encourage you to find a little bit longer time to do that if you could. This was about 50-50, if I think, is my mind's eye sees it. I didn't time it, but 30 minutes for Q&A is a lot. But I do think it's going to limit your audience if the prerequisite to this session is to view the other one. Now you're asking people to put in a 2-hour time increment, and not too many people who are working all the time can do that. Now I'm semi-retired, so it's easy for me, and I'm like Tom, I went through the whole thing. But I think that might be stretching it in terms of being able to acquire an audience. But I really like the summation that he gave to begin with, because I really think he covered what was in the video quite well, at least as my mind's eye saw it. And the other thing too is that I think when people go to a podcast or a vodcast or your SMET discussions or even this, I don't think they come away with 10 new ideas. I think they come away with one or two or three things that kind of strike them in a way as to that connects with what they're doing now. And so I think to expect a lot of information to flow is not reasonable. They'll get one or two or 3 points. And I think if you can get each person to get one or two or 3 points, I think that's tremendous contribution. I mean, incredible. So I like the format that we have now. I think I might be a little bit like Tom and maybe reduce the talk and increase the Q&A. But overall, I really liked it. I liked it because now you get a chance to interact. And I think that's really powerful. Sometimes you just have one question that unlocks everything. But I think expecting them to see the prior podcast is maybe a good suggestion. I wouldn't make it a requirement. I think B, having a summation of it like Hide did is excellent. And I think the Q&A is purely outstanding. I think it's a great new product, Dr.
So,
We have
as
one
a
more hand.
guest, as a host from India, for us, the guests are like we said, Atiti Devo Baba. That means the guests are like God to us, and I don't go before the guest goes. So whoever feels that they can, the time is up. I know it's around 9:45 at night in India, and people are ready for their dinner. So, and it is probably near past breakfast time, near lunchtime in the United States. So those who want to stay back and talk to Obasan, I don't know whether you got time. No, you got a meeting at 11 o'clock. That I know.
No, that's yesterday. Don't worry.
Okay,
That's
so
yesterday.
Obasan is
Yeah.
willing to stay, and those who want to talk more to Obasan can hang on. I have got the whole night with me. So those who want to have their dinner, lunch, whatever, thank you very much.
We have one more question.
And I'm planning one session per month, and I hope we get through.
I think there's one more question, one more raised hand.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, those who want to peel off, see you. Thank you for coming. And most probably catch up in the month of February. And please join us.
We have one
Thank
question.
you, Obasan. Thank you, Dr. M. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those who want to stay back can stay
Thank you
back.
so much, sir. Amazing session. Thank
Pardon
you.
me?
It's really amazing.
What, Shreya?
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm saying it's
Yes,
an
question.
amazing session, sir. It was a quick revision of the Kaizen and its standardized work. I enjoyed the session. Next time I'll be with the more inputs from my side as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shreya.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you,
Thank you a
sir.
lot.
We
Great
like the
session.
concept that
Thank you very much.
Dr. M, as you move forward with this, first, I think you got a great place to start. But I would suggest that you do a little PDCA with this and determine what is success. Okay. And to me, you've already got a lot of the pieces of it. There's a lot of interaction and that type of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, you can't have 100 people here, because if there's 100 people in participation, then there's only 10% of the people get their questions answered. So there's on the other hand, you don't want 4 people there. So I would say that success is some number between 5 and 100 people showing up this session. Normally, teaching sessions are best if you've got somewhere between 10 and 20,
Yeah.
and not everybody in these sessions had questions. But I would suggest what you do is you set kind of a target as to how many people you would like to have participating, and then from there adjust everything so that you kind of create that group. And then people can contribute if they want to. They can get their questions answered. But you don't want an auditorium here. I don't think an auditorium would serve your needs. And you don't want 1 or 2 either. So
No, I
Just a
get the
thought.
point, because this is getting recorded and is getting shared on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if they have any further questions or comment to make, I'm sure Obasan and any of my 28 guests on my podcast would be ready to talk to them, or they can do a DM with them and get talking, because one of the aims that I have is to connect all the continuous improvement professionals across the globe. So I get your point. We will do that, and then in any case, I'm going to publish it so they can interact further.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Dr. M.
I think
Prem, really was a great session.
Thank
It
you.
was
Yeah.
really a great session. A lot of insights. Thank you so much, Dr. M, for inviting me into this session, and my sincere thanks to Obasan as well. Would like to have participate in this session in the coming months as well. Thanks for the great initiative.
Yes. Thank you, Obasan. Thank you, Dr. M. And we learned that concept. That is very good point, line, area, and body. So we will try to implement. And
Yes,
thanks.
please.
Thanks again for value addition. And I got that yesterday's newspaper and Christmas and all, that is a very good funny. But that is the reality. But that is the reality. So
Yes.
we read a lot of about the respect for the people, but it is first time I got the in-depth understanding. In your LinkedIn articles, you always provide the meaning of ba, meaning of gain. So it's just superficial. So you are really providing the depth, Obasan. Thank you.
You know what? This reminds me what Rico Kano said. What Sensei Iwata used to tell her is that it was. I don't know much about rugby, etc. But the Rico used to say that Iwata said it used to be Monday quarterback discussion. I mean, you all understand it. I didn't. So I had Rico Kano to explain to me what this Monday quarterback discussion. Done any light on that, guys?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. M. Thank you very much.
See you, Bhupesh.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
But whenever I read articles from Obasan or your podcast, I know the quote from the Socrates that I know nothing, because it's a lot of depth, but we have not learned to that depth. So thanks once again.
Okay, Kiran, next time I literally mean see you. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank
Honestly,
you.
I would
Thanks a
love
lot.
to see your handsome face.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yeah, bye. Thank you, Obasan.
Thank you.
Yes, nice. Thank you. Bye.
I have one hand. Is it?
Yeah, thank you. Great session. Adding to the feedback from the colleagues regarding the timing and for the Q&A, because I wanted to ask some questions, but it's not. I can ask them.
You can ask now.
Later. Yeah. Okay. Then I will go, especially for the how to influence people, because every time when I work with people who on continuous improvement, when implementing or engaging people on implementing a new improvement or Kaizen, so they struggle how to engage people, how to influence them, especially when they have not direct reports from other teams or from this is every time when I discuss with the colleagues from other department, from other sites who are leading the continuous improvement or operational excellence, they are struggling how to engage people. I don't know if please.
One is we're going to make sure that management is involved, right? If they got to allocate the resources and time to these people to be engaged, and give a chance to join workshops, or allow the operators or people to take opinions about this kind of activities or ideas or something that's happening on the shop floor. And it's a similar discussion with we are having about the size of the audience and stuff, right? If you make the size big, it's very difficult for somebody to say things. So it's easy to do it in a smaller sessions for sure. And for the operators, like I sometimes do like a pizza party and showing a video of like each worker working, because somebody is following the standardized work and somebody is not on that video, for example. Eh? And they can criticize it. First of all, they're going to start making fun of each other, but they can sort of criticize and have more detailed discussion, because in many cases the person that following the standardized work is actually working less harder and looks smoother, and people start saying, why this guy is so slow but efficient. And that's how I try to create this engagement, is to say, instead of trying to push standardized work or Kaizen or that kind of thing. No. I sort of let them say things. Another example I had was I had multiple operators in the process, and one person used to work at Toyota. So she was very good at coming up with not Kaizens, but complaining about some of the processes. And that's because the process that I designed and implemented was horrible, but let's put that aside. But other operators saw her speaking up. And eventually they came to me and asked the question, are we allowed to do that? Right? Because they thought that they are not allowed to complain. And I said, no, I'm more than happy to hear your voices of how you feel about this work that we moved in place. And slowly they start to show. And the first one they show, I need to show full respect. Right? If I say, no, that's not a good idea, then they will never speak up anymore. First time, how crazy that idea looks like, I need to listen to it and say, okay, let's understand what you're trying to work with, and let's try to implement. For example, one time I had was we had a Kanban, but the operator, the first time they spoke up is saying that, hey, this card doesn't make sense. Let's use a ping pong ball. And the moment I used the ping pong ball for Kanban, the ping pong stuff jumping around the whole factory. And I knew that gonna happen, but yeah, but who cares, right? It's just a ping pong ball. It doesn't cost you that much. And I can try it. But then I can say to the operator, okay, maybe the suggestion of the ping pong ball wasn't a good idea. But I know I understand your concern about this Kanban card that we're using. And we try to understand, is it getting stuck? Is the post that I'm supposed to put the Kanban is too high or too far from her? Or what's the real reason behind her complaint? And fix those issues. Then when I provide the right solution, they will start, getting involved in this activity. So don't try to involve everybody at once. Try to set up a small group, involve the managers for sure, and then seriously listen to the first complaint or idea they have. And no matter how good or bad it is, let's try it to show that we respect those ideas and start to get engaged. And they are very shy at the beginning, right? They never grew up in an environment where they had the freedom to speak. But we have to let them speak. So, and little by little, I change. Yeah, that's how I try to create the involvement.
Can I
Be a
respond?
different approach. Yeah.
Obasan, thanks a lot. Obasan, since ma'am is asking about workforce engagement, let me inform you there is an author sitting amongst us, and I run what is called a Dr. Reb study circle, and we are studying the science of workforce engagement. And that gentleman is none other than Lonnie Wilson. So over to you, Lonnie Wilson. You can get in touch with him. And there are 11 chapters in the science of workforce engagement. And we started this study circle where we meet once in a week. And in 11 weeks, we cover it. Is an amazing book. And that's not the only book. He has written 8 books. The only person who has written a book on lean refining. So getting back to science of workforce engagement, the end results, we are still in the first batch, the second batch. The end result is that we want to designate ourselves as workforce engagement engineers. Rani, over to you to carry on with the workforce engagement.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Yes, join us. Join us. We'd love to have people.
Yeah.
Can I add a comment to your question? I think Obasan maybe said it, but one of the things I always look for is what people struggling with. If people are not engaged, don't want to be involved, look for what they're struggling with and fix it for them, maybe using their idea if at all possible. And you'll start to get some buy-in, this person might really want to help improve. And that will get you some of that engagement. And it may only be some of the people, but at least you're making some progress and others will see it. And eventually most will come on board, just as a way to
Yeah, Tom,
practically
that's
make
that's
that
one of our
happen.
principles when we teach engagement, is that engagement may not be the normal situation. In other words, there's a lot of people who are
Yep.
not engaged, but it's the natural situation. People want to be engaged.
Yep.
And if you wanted to say how many things do you need to add to the system or how many things do you need to take out of the system, quite frankly, most of the things you need to take out is the barriers that prevent them from being engaged. And there's so many both subtle and not very subtle things we do that hinder people's engagement. And Hide has touched on a ton of them. One of them is transparency. If the people can't see whether they're really doing a good job or not, it's kind of hard to, get excited about it. But if they can, then it's a whole lot easier. And I can't tell you how many things I had learned about transparency when I was working with a couple of Toyota plants. I thought I had a pretty good understanding of it, but then I saw many of the things that they did, and I said, geez, there were all kinds of gee whizzes, that showed up. And most of the gee whizzes had to do with taking something out of the control of management and giving it down to a lower level. I would bet that 80 or 90% of those ideas were that. As a matter of fact, I did one little experiment one time when I got in an argument with the plant manager, and he said his supervisors were overworked. And I wouldn't disagree with it, but I think they're structured to be overworked. And he said, what are you talking about? And so we went through the task that the supervisor was doing. And then we went out and asked the workers, what do you need to be able to do this? And almost always, the thing that they needed was information. It wasn't additional skills. It was just information. And up to the point of determining whether they need to work overtime or not. And so as you pass that information down, you start to empower a whole new group of people. And the biggest thing that we found was it becomes very disconcerting to the supervisor because they kind of feel like you're stealing something from them that makes them a supervisor. And so, you need to give them true supervisory tasks to perform. But there is just an immense amount of power at the worker level that is underutilized. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for making that point earlier today.
No. Thanks for clarifying. There's a lot of power that we are underutilizing for sure. Yeah. They are shy, right? There's a lot of shy people in the world, so.
All right. I'm going to say hi, bye. Thank you all for inviting me and talk to you all later.
See you soon.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Further. So yeah, I just wanted to repeat what my father said about, I think I said it before, respect the human, right? We have limited time, so don't waste any of our time, and respect our humanity. We have unlimited humanity, so we should always embrace our creativity, capability, whatever the thing that we talked about.